डार्क तो हमारी लाइव्स ही हैं पूरी. Somehow लोग फिल्मों को डार्क बोलने लग जाते हैं. So the thing about pain is that the moment you confront it, it's gone after that, right?
Right.
So I think that leads to more permanent happiness.
Yeah.
हमको टूरिज्म डिपार्टमेंट थोड़ी ना है कि आगरा में पिक्चर बना रहे हैं तो ताजमहल दिखाना है.
So, hello and welcome to my cinema story. First of all, congratulations. The film is finally releasing in theaters.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
And what are you expecting from the audience reaction?
Nothing at all. The audience reaction will speak for itself. मेरे लिए वैसे भी जब पिक्चर खत्म होती है तो मेरे हाथ से निकल जाती है. So it's the audience's film now. It's up to them. And to be honest, once a film is done and it goes out of your hands, it is a different film for everyone. I don't know if I'm able to explain myself very well here, but what I mean is that every film is seen differently by every member of the audience. So,
Right.
it becomes many films, and it totally, how you perceive a film doesn't, of course, it depends on how the film is made, but it doesn't totally depend, in my opinion, on how the film is made. It also depends on how open you are to watching that particular film at that particular point of time.
True.
So at sometimes people are just not ready to watch a film, और हजार चीजें होती है. There are हजार factors at play. तो मैं इसके बारे में सोचता ही नहीं. I am not thinking. My job is to get it out there, which it's that circle is going to be complete. So
Yeah, it took quite a time to get out there, right? It had some
Yeah.
issues, difficulties.
Long journey. It was a
Yeah.
long journey.
But now, this year, in September, we saw Sabar Bonda, Humans in the Loop, films like those independent films coming into theaters. So, do you think
Yeah.
independent cinema is changing in India this year?
यार ये मैं तब बोलूंगा when something structurally changes around independent cinema. The thing is that it might just be a coincidence that we are seeing Sabar Bonda and Humans in the Loop and Agra coming out now, but we don't know what has gone on behind that journey. Like Agra has been in the making for almost a decade.
Right.
Right? I don't know what has been the journey of Sabar Bonda or Humans in the Loop. Maybe 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. So the answer to this is that this has nothing to do with the revival of independent cinema. That is a separate question which needs to be understood and addressed separately, which will get resolved. The revival of independent cinema will happen if there is structural support for independent cinema, if there is thought through consistent support for independent cinema.
Right. So, coming back to Agra, when you first started writing the film, what was that one image or emotion that pulled you into the story?
So I has to be sexual repression to a certain extent, or the inability to express myself. I mean, I went back to my teenage years and even late adulthood, even like mid-20s. I was not able to express myself the way I wanted to, and I felt like it was something that I had not been able to address at the correct time. And then I started thinking more about it, and I realized it was not just me. I had seen a lot of other young boys around me going through a similar thing, or maybe a thing that was, even more excavated than what I had felt. And so I thought it's interesting. It's an interesting area to go in, and it requires some conversation. But I didn't really have an in into the film. Then फिर मैं ये सोचने लगा, but तो फिर मैं अलग क्या बोलूंगा? Like, how am I adding to the conversation? What do I really have to say about sexuality and repression? And the day I discovered the idea of space, sexuality versus space, as in the number of people we are and how the spaces that we inhabit directly affect our sexuality and vice versa. That day I was like, okay, this is interesting. Now, it's an interesting idea. If we look at it through the lens of space, and it's so us also, वो इतना ज़्यादा organically Indian है उस
Yeah.
इस इन एरियाज में जो सेक्सुअलिटी स्पेस और ट्रांजैक्शंस के बीच की जो स्पेस है वो इतनी ज्यादा इंडियन है, इतनी ज्यादा रूटेड है हमारे कल्चर में, that I was like there's some interesting possibility for a newish or whatever, something that we hadn't seen before, that kind of zone.
Yeah, actually, I was having a conversation with Priyanka Bose also recently about Agra.
Right.
So we were
Yeah.
discussing that how when we talk about Agra, we think of Taj Mahal, but your film
Yeah.
shows a completely different, darker interior side of the city. How did that
Yeah.
thought come in the first place? Why
ये
Agra?
डाकर का तो यार देख, निनाद ऐसा है ना कि डाक तो हमारी लाइव्स ही हैं पूरी, somehow लोग फिल्मों को डाक बोलने लग जाते हैं. So all our lives are so depending on how much we choose to face the truth in our lives are so difficult, so painful. It is most often pain that teaches us the most, right? खुश रह के और खुशी में तो कोई ग्रो नहीं किया है, या कोई
Yeah.
बहुत बड़ा चेंज नहीं आता है किसी में. खुशी is most more or less status quo. It's pain that teaches us. So somehow we are experiencing all of that pain or that darkness, I'm going to give it in quotes, in our lives, but we are learning and we are growing as we are experiencing those things, but somehow we want to keep running away from it again and again and again, perhaps because it's so difficult. Nobody wants to do the difficult thing. We want our lives to be slightly easier. So yeah, I mean, to me, I guess what I'm saying is, to me, Agra is not a dark film. It's just a film that holds up a mirror. And it is a film that is asking you to see the truth,
Yeah.
and asking you to have a conversation about it. And eventually, when you are able to look at the truth and have a conversation about it, तो वो पेन निकल जाता है, वो पेन एक्ज्यूम हो जाता है. The thing about pain is that the moment you confront it, it's gone after that, right?
Right.
So I think that leads to more permanent happiness, actually, rather than just going and watching some designed happy experience, which will be just momentary happiness. How do we deal with pain in our bodies, in our life? If you exhume the pain fully, then that is a promise of a longer state of stability and happiness. So that's how I look at films, and specifically Agra. तो मेरे को वो थोड़ा समझ में नहीं आता कि ये डार्क एरियाज में जा रही है. It's going into human areas. It's going
Yeah.
into areas of our life.
But I think because of the Taj Mahal thing and Agra, so it got more contrast to it. Like, because Taj Mahal,
Right.
we always
Yeah.
see like a good side and touristy spot and all, a symbol of love and all.
Yeah.
So it was a
Yeah.
complete contrast in that sense.
Yeah, but that gaze of connecting Agra and Taj Mahal anyway is a very capitalistic gaze.
Yeah.
हमको tourism department थोड़ी ना है कि आगरा में पिक्चर बना रहे हैं तो ताजमहल दिखाना है. So
Right.
that is a very capitalistic peg for looking at a city and trying to walk you through it from it's some other gaze. So yeah.
Also, the opening scene of Agra, like when the film starts, it immediately sets the tone of the film. Like, what's it about? What
Yeah.
kind of tone it is? So something
Yeah.
which we can't forget easily. So how did you
Yeah.
build around that moment? Like how, because the opening scene of any film is very important.
Yeah.
So how
Yeah.
did you write it?
Yeah, so for me, when as more and more of the film emerged in front of me, um, I started realizing कि यार ये फिल्म का जो सेंटर है वो बहुत डिफिकल्ट कैरेक्टर है. He's a guy who's doing a lot of stuff that is not easily digestible, but he's doing it. He's doing what he's doing, uh, and he is going to open up some really difficult areas of our life. and he's going to make us stare into corners which we usually avoid. So I was like, okay, so now I'm asking you to walk into that sort of an experience. And I felt like I want the opening scene to be two or three different things together. One, I want it to obviously reflect the character that you're about to see, and put you in his mindset. So that indication towards bestiality, almost एक human being एक animal के साथ sex कर रहा है, उसको fuck कर रहा है, and that suggestion of bestiality for me was also uh, uh, an indication that you are going to go into those layers of sexuality in this film. And then, of course, it was an invocation, and then it was a warning also. Invocation in the sense कि भैया अब ये होने वाला है, ये पिक्चर कुछ ऐसी होने वाली है, इस इन चीजों के बारे में होने वाली है, प्रभु का नाम लो और साफ मन से आगे बढ़ो और देखो ये कहाँ जाता है, एक्सपीरियंस करो, and know that the intention is not to titillate, right? And then it was a warning that if you're not ready for this kind of an experience, this is the time to step out. It's just the first scene. If you feel like this is too much for you, walk out now. Mat karo. Maybe you're not ready for this. Something like that. So I was trying to do these 2-3 things with the first scene.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah.
So, Agra in some strange way reminded me of Om Darbadar. I don't know how, but the way it explores space and identity some way. So has Kamal Swaroop have you been influenced by him in some way?
वो मतलब आपने क्या नाम ले लिया? It's not, I don't think it's anywhere close to Om Darbadar. Of course, Kamal sir is a big influence in some sense. I was lucky enough to actually spend my first 6 months in film school were with Kamal sir as our screenplay writing teacher in the first semester. तो एक्चुअली मेरा पहला दिन फिल्म स्कूल में, पहली रात, एक्चुअली विदाउट गोइंग इनटू डिटेल्स, पहली रात फिल्म स्कूल की कमल सर के साथ थी पूरी रैगिंग टेरेस पे मेरे. And then I was lucky enough to spend, he was there for 6 months with us, my first 6 months, मतलब वो जो बैच था उसके. तो yeah, I spent time with him, hung out with him. I enjoyed a lot, and I learned a lot from him in those 6 months. And he's been a sort of peripheral presence ever since. कुछ लिखता हूँ तो उनको दिखा देता हूँ, उनको feedback ले लेता हूँ. He's obviously he sees all the cuts of all my films, and yeah. So undoubtedly, I mean, one of the masters from India. So yeah.
I didn't know that he was your teacher. You taught him. It just came to my mind after watching Agra that about
yeah. It's very strange that you mentioned that, but yeah.
Yeah, and also Rahul Roy. How did he come on board? Because I was surprised to see him in this film. So what made you think of him for this role?
Actually, it was through the audition process. Whenever I start a film, I do workshops, and I have multiple options for each character in my workshop. And it's got nothing to do with, I think it's the best way to kill ego, or do an ego check. Not even to kill ego, do an ego check. तो वो वहीं से ही पहले बहुत endearing था मेरे लिए, that Rahul chose to be a part of the workshop, knowing that there'll be other contenders for the role there. तो वो एक ईगो चेक तो शुरू में हो ही जाता है, ईगो चेक, डिवोशन चेक हो जाता है. इतना बड़ा स्टैचर, इतना ज्यादा लंबा बॉडी ऑफ वर्क, और उसके बावजूद अगर कोई आपके साथ आके इतना ज्यादा प्रोसेस को सबमिट करने को तैयार है, तो वो ही बहुत बड़ी बात है टू बिगिन विद. एंड देन ऑफ कोर्स जस्ट द शेयर अमाउंट ऑफ हार्ड वर्क दैट मैन पुट इन. He used to be the first to come, and I'm not saying this because he's Rahul Roy. This is actual fact. He used to be the first one to come every day, and he used to be the last one to leave every day for 3 whole months at the workshop. And just to see that sort of dedication, that sort of desire to immerse yourself in a part, was just magical for me. Put together with his ability as a performer, as an actor. And I remember one day, almost 3-4 weeks into the workshop, सब चले वाले गए, मैं और वो बच जाते थे रोज रात को, तो हम अकेले बैठ के चाय वाय पी रहे होते थे। तो वहां बरगद का पेड़ था एक, जहाँ वर्कशॉप कर रहे थे, तो पेड़ के नीचे चाय बैठ के पी रहे थे। एंड राहुल जस्ट टर्न्ड अराउंड टू मी एंड सेड कि यार मेरे को ना तेरे से एक बात बोलनी है। आई वाज लाइक, हाँ सर बोलो, क्या बोला है? That ये फिल्म मैं ही करूंगा, और कोई नहीं करेगा। So, so I looked at him and I was like, "Yaar, if he is so convinced and if he so badly wants this, then maybe he's the right choice for this part." Coupled, obviously, of course, with some of his natural rhythms were so similar. Rahul was in many ways also very similar to parts of Daddy, which organically I think helped me decide that he'll be able to know what Daddy is feeling in the film.
Right, from Titli to Agra, both your films explore, people trapped within families, home systems. So, is that a
Hmm.
recurring theme for you as a storyteller?
Not really, yaar. I've been asked this question before. For me, they are two completely different films. Abhi family or family unit to is a part of all of our lives. It's the best way to explore a character. Where else would you want to explore a character if not in their most intimate environment? So I think the family home aspect of it, yes, on the surface it can feel common, but that's just the setting for the film. For
Yeah.
me, Titli was a film about family, circularity, violence, and for me, this is about sexuality and sexual repression and desire and transactionality. तो thematically ये दोनों बिल्कुल completely different areas हैं जाने के लिए.
And then you had Dispatch, which was again different world based on a
Yeah.
real story and crime journalism. How did you approach that?
Dispatch, I think, was really new territory for me
Yeah.
because मेरे को उस वर्ल्ड के बारे में कुछ भी नहीं पता था। मुझे और ईशानी को जब हम साथ में लिख रहे थे, we had no idea. Actually, Ishani had a little bit more idea because she'd done journalism for a while. So she was slightly, to whatever extent she'd been involved, she was at least familiar with the world. But I had no knowledge. So both of us were quite wary before stepping in to write that film. But we decided that to instill more confidence in ourselves, it will have to be a very research heavy film. तो हमने 8-9 महीने तो बस रिसर्च ही करी उस फिल्म की। कुछ लिखा नहीं, कुछ नहीं, बस लोगों से मिले, बात करी, प्रिंट ऑफिसेस में फ्लाई ऑन द वॉल की तरह बैठ के टाइम स्पेंड किया, और try to find out as much about the character's life as possible, the character, the person that Joy's character was based on.
Yeah.
वो सारा करने में, सब रिसर्च करने में, सब कुछ करने में ही 8-9 महीने लग गए. And I think by the time that 9 month period got over, both of us were feeling a bit better because at least we had some inside gaze into how the world operates. And that really helped us. And so once we had our basic structure ready, coming off that research, then it took us another 8 to 9 months to just get the screenplay right where we wanted it to be. So yeah, in terms of process, वो बिल्कुल ही एक्टर वाला ही प्रोसेस था कि रिसर्च करके एक्टर की तरह आपने पूरा समझा वर्ल्ड को, and then you go ahead and you try to tweak it and say, okay, what is this really about? What is this film really about beyond the story? What are we trying to say through this? And in many ways, I was trying to do an exploration of some sort of lack. Why do people choose to be heroes? Why do they try to step out of their skin and try to get somewhere in life? And usually it's the people who have a certain lack, जिसके पास कुछ नहीं होता वही कुछ पाने की खोज में निकलता है. So yeah, uh, that became the central impulse for the film. And and then I just wanted to look at it through a very Faustian sort of gaze. So yeah, that's what we were trying to do with Dispatch.
What next after Dispatch? What's your next project? Is there any series or movie?
There are several things. There are things in early development, though. I think it's maybe a little too soon to talk about it. Yeah.
You tend to co-write with different people. Like for Agra, your co-writer was Atika Chauhan, and for Dispatch it was Ishani Banerjee. So how does that work? Like different co-writers, and then you need to be on the same page when you're writing something.
Yeah.
How does that happen?
I mean, there are two aspects to it. One is obviously finding the right person. I think I enjoy writing with another person in a room because it always gives you much more perspective on what you're doing, and there's another point of view in the room, and so there's if you're really trying to have a conversation with your film, I think you need to start with a conversation in a room with someone else. So it's interesting. That process is very interesting for me, that I'm not sitting alone. I can be with another person. We can chat, we can thrash through ideas and reach where we want to reach. So that's one. And then obviously, it life takes over. Like with Titli, after Titli, I wanted to write another film with Sharat, but he was busy. He went somewhere else. And so I ended up meeting Atika, and we ended up doing Agra. And so, it very organically sort of happened with Ishani on Dispatch. So yeah.
What would you say to someone who wants to make films but has no team, no film school experience, but has a story? How do they start?
Right. देखो, आज की तारीख में फिल्म बनाना काफी आसान है. एज फर्स्ट टाइम फिल्म मेकर, टूल्स तो सारे हैं आपके पास. तो putting together a small film, a small indie as a first time filmmaker is not that tough. You can go out and shoot it. But I wish and I end up seeing a fair amount of first films or early work of younger filmmakers. Sometimes I wish that they took more time with the all parts of the writing process. When I say the writing process, not just the writing of the screenplay, but what goes in before you start writing the screenplay, right?
Yeah.
Let's call it the process of discovering whether I have a film here or not. Not everything can and should be a film, right? So there needs to be a very patient process of sitting down and truthfully, honestly, being able to peel off the layers of your idea and say, okay, there might not really be an interesting film here, or there is an interesting film here, and do that work. वो जो 7-8-9 महीने का solid काम है to find out कि भैया ये फिल्म है क्या और ये फिल्म actually में क्या है, beyond layer 1, which is the spoken layer. Beyond that, at the subliminal layer, what is it saying that it's not saying? I think that I wish first time filmmakers spend more time there before they switched in and started writing. And then, of course, once you have this idea and then you start writing, in the process of the writing, this idea will only change. It will not stay the same. But for it to change, you need a very solid foundation of what you think it is, right? So I feel like, that's one piece of advice that I would want to give young filmmakers, that spend a bit more time figuring that out.
Well, last question for Agra. If there's one emotion or thought you'd like people to carry after watching Agra, what would that be?
Oof. Oh. I don't know, yaar. I hadn't thought about that. after they step out, after watching the film?
Yeah.
Um, I don't know, some sort of pain, some sort of confrontation with the self, which
Yeah.
which gives rise to an interesting, panicky yet truthful pain in your gut.
Reaching to the space in your own mind that you know avoid, like in some way.
I would say not. The only thing I would say is not mind gut.
Yeah.
Mind is not everything. Mind is just the upper layer. There's the mind, there's the heart, and then there's the gut. I'd much rather, if you're not fully understanding what you're seeing, but you're feeling something in your gut. That's always that always is like my bigger goal. That I would value that more. Comprehension is not, my ultimate goal for me.
Finally, the last question. Since our page is called My Cinema Story, so we always
Yeah.
ask this question: that what is your cinema story? That moment, that film, or any experience which made you fall in love with cinema. In general, cinema, not filmmaking.
I have spoken about this a lot. I don't know, I'll be repeating myself, but for me, one of the earliest film watching memories is Ben-Hur and the chariot race in Ben-Hur, and watching that chariot race and watching that man getting trampled under the one of the chariots, and watching his face, his bloody face, and I remember I had gone with my mother. I remember turning around to my mother after the film, sitting on a bench. I must have been like 6 or 7 years old. I remember turning around to her and saying, "Did that really happen? Did he really die under that chariot?" And I remember my mother explaining the process of how it's shot and how
Mhm.
no, he had not actually died. And then I had several questions of, okay, but then how did they shoot that? How did this happen? Where was the camera? Da, 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 da. So I think that whole long conversation is probably when I first fell in love with films, because I was like, my God, this is so real, and
Yeah,
it feels like almost like reality. How did someone achieve this? And if this can be achieved, oh, there are so many possibilities here. So yeah,
that's nice. So yeah, it's all from my side.
thank you.
It's a
Thanks.
really great talking to you. A lot of things which I didn't knew about films and filmmaking. Got to know from you.
Lo- Lovely to speak to you too. Thank you for taking out the time.
Yeah, thank you so much, and all the best for Agra. I hope it
Thank you.
sparks some conversation.
I hope so too. Let's see.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye bye.